Florida was never supposed to look like this. For years, the script was simple. Sunshine, palm trees, exploding demand, and a housing market that always seemed to find a higher floor. Buy a condo, buy a house, buy anything, and the market would take care of the rest. That script is breaking in 2026. Behind the glossy listings and beach photos, some of Florida's most popular cities are quietly entering full housing stress. Prices that sprinted ahead of local incomes, insurance bills that feel like a second mortgage, storm damage that never really healed, investors trying to unload at the same time, and families who thought they were buying the dream, now wondering how they ended up trapped. This is Discover the Nation. If you want real breakdowns of where housing is actually cracking, not just polished headlines, hit subscribe right now. We follow the data, the risk, and the fine print that nobody puts in the brochure. Today, we are counting down the top 10 Florida cities facing the worst housing meltdown. Some are famous coastal names, some are mid-sized boom towns that rode the pandemic wave too hard. All of them share one problem: the cost of owning no longer matches the reality on the ground. Stay with us to the end, because the number one city is still being sold as a golden opportunity, but once you run the numbers, it starts to look a lot more like a warning. Let us dive in.
Number 10. Jacksonville. Jacksonville spent years selling itself as the affordable big city in Florida, a huge land area, suburban-style neighborhoods, and prices that look tame compared to South Florida or the Gulf Coast. During the last boom, that narrative pulled in buyers from all over the state and from out of state as well. The trouble is that affordability advantage has been eroding fast. Home prices in many neighborhoods jumped far more quickly than local wages. For households tied to logistics, port work, healthcare, or city jobs, the total monthly cost of ownership now eats a much larger share of income than it did just a few years ago. Taxes, insurance, and rising utility bills stack on top of mortgages that were locked in near the top of the market. Storm and flood risk are a growing part of the story. Jacksonville's position along the St. Johns River and near the coast means heavy rains and tropical systems can create real flooding concerns in certain zones. As insurers look more closely at flood maps and past claims, premiums are adjusting upward. Some owners who once paid manageable rates are seeing renewals that force hard budget choices. Others are realizing that the coverage they actually want now comes with bigger deductibles and more exclusions. On the ground, you can see the strain in how listings behave. Some suburban tracts that were once hot now show the same signs of fatigue. More price cuts, more homes sitting through multiple weekends, more sellers quietly accepting offers that would have felt low a couple of years ago. Investors who bought rental houses at elevated prices are finding that rent growth is no longer guaranteed, especially as new construction adds competition and tenants push back on increases. Drive around long enough and you notice something else. Certain older neighborhoods need infrastructure upgrades, just as the city is wrestling with budget limits. Roads, drainage, and public services do not automatically keep up with sprawl. When you combine those pressures with higher ownership costs, Jacksonville starts to look less like an easy big city bargain and more like a market where one bad storm or one job loss can push owners over the edge.
Number 9. Port St. Lucie. Port St. Lucie was once the quiet alternative on Florida's Treasure Coast. Subdivisions, golf courses, and a slower pace that felt far from the crowds of Miami or Orlando. During the pandemic years, that reputation changed as buyers flooded in, looking for more space, new construction, and less chaos. Prices followed the people. New developments exploded along key corridors, and resale demand surged. For a while, it felt like Port St. Lucie could absorb everyone who was priced out of South Florida. But by 2026, the disconnect between prices and local paychecks has become impossible to ignore. Households anchored in regional service jobs, healthcare, trades, and public sector roles now struggle to make the numbers work on recently built homes with big tax bills. Insurance and storm exposure are the hidden engines driving a lot of the stress. This stretch of coast does not get as many headlines as some famous hurricane zones, but the risk is real. Insurers have raised premiums,
tightened coverage, and in some cases exited entirely. Buyers who look only at the principal and interest payments are getting blindsided when they add four-figure annual insurance bills and rising property taxes on top. For some families, that extra cost alone is the difference between breathing room and constant anxiety. You can see the confidence wobble in the way sellers behave. New homes that went under contract instantly in 2021 now sit longer. Builders are offering closing credits, upgrades, and even rate buydowns. Some investors who bought multiple properties are quietly testing the market, hoping to get out before deeper price cuts arrive. The rental market, meanwhile, is hitting resistance as local incomes stretch to cover higher asking rents and utilities. Talk to longtime residents, and they will tell you that traffic has grown heavier, schools feel more crowded, and basic services are straining to keep up with growth. When a city is still catching up on infrastructure while housing costs reset downward, that is a sign you are in the middle of a fragile phase, not a comfortable long-term value play.
Number 8. Kissimmee. Kissimmee lives in the shadow of Orlando's theme parks. For years, it was marketed as the place where you could buy a vacation rental, ride the theme park economy, and let tourists pay your mortgage. Subdivisions with pools, short-term rental communities, and rows of houses that all promise the same formula. That formula is now breaking for a lot of owners. During the travel rebound, nightly rates and occupancy shot up. Investors piled in, paying elevated prices for homes they never planned to live in. By 2026, many of those same properties are facing softer bookings, more competition, and tighter local regulations. Some communities have capped short-term rentals or increased enforcement. Others have added fees and rule changes that eat directly into profit margins and restrict how often a property can be rented. On top of that, the broader cost of carrying these homes has climbed. Insurance for Central Florida properties is no longer a minor line item. Higher premiums, bigger deductibles, and more exclusions mean that one storm can wipe out a year of rental income. Property taxes adjust upward based on purchase prices that were set in the boom. Association dues and special assessments show up as buildings age and shared amenities need resurfacing, roof work, or upgraded security. The result is that many owners are discovering their supposed cash-flowing asset now barely breaks even or runs negative. When they try to sell, they find a market crowded with similar listings, all promising the same pool, the same distance to the parks, and the same rental story. The only way to stand out is to cut the price or throw in concessions, which can be painful when you bought at peak. For local families, the story is not much better. Many Kissimmee neighborhoods have seen rents rise faster than wages, especially in complexes designed around tourism jobs. When both owners and tenants feel squeezed, it is a sign that the local housing model was built on overly optimistic assumptions. That is why Kissimmee shows up on any honest list of Florida housing trouble spots.
Number 7. Tampa. Tampa was crowned one of Florida's winners after the last recession. A revived downtown, booming sports culture, new jobs, and a reputation as the Gulf city that finally figured it out. Investors, remote workers, and lifelong renters all turned into buyers as fast as they could. The issue in 2026 is not that Tampa has collapsed, it is that the math underpinning its housing market has become much more fragile. Prices rose steeply through the pandemic era, especially in close-in suburbs and waterfront neighborhoods. Many households now carry mortgages that were sized for peak optimism. When you layer on property taxes that reflect those peak valuations and insurance premiums that continue to climb with storm and flood risk, the monthly payment can feel suffocating. For some owners, the house payment dominates every other financial decision. Storm seasons in recent years have also been a wake-up call. Even when Tampa dodges a direct hit, near misses and regional impacts push insurers to reassess their exposure. Renewals arrive with much higher numbers, new windstorm deductibles, or coverage reductions. For owners on a tight budget, there is no easy way to handle a sudden jump of several $1,000s a year. Some decide to drop optional coverages, adding another layer of risk they might not fully understand. In the market data, that stress shows up as more listings,
longer marketing times, and a quiet shift from bidding wars to negotiations. Some condos downtown and along the waterfront have to offer incentives and closing credits to move units. Older homes need expensive upgrades to meet insurance standards or current codes. That pushes some sellers into a corner where they either discount heavily or hold on and hope conditions improve. Beneath the skyline, there is another problem. Service workers and younger professionals are being pushed farther out into ex-urban areas where commutes are longer and infrastructure is thinner. When the people who staff the restaurants, hospitals, and stadiums cannot live anywhere close to their jobs, a housing market is standing on a shaky foundation, no matter how healthy the listing photos look.
Number 6. Orlando. For years, Orlando's housing market rode on one idea: tourism is forever. As long as people keep flying in for theme parks and conventions, the local economy will churn and homes will hold their value. In 2026, that assumption is being tested. The boom years saw massive suburban expansion. New communities sprouted along every highway, built on the belief that demand would always keep up. Prices surged as investors snapped up rental properties for theme park workers, traveling nurses, and remote workers who preferred sunshine. Now, higher rates have cooled that investor appetite. Many of those same owners are facing rising costs and softer rents, especially in outer ring subdivisions where there is little to distinguish one property from the next. Insurance is a rising threat here as well. Inland does not mean safe in Florida. Severe storms have reminded everyone that wind and flood can travel far from the coastline. Insurers raising premiums or pulling back from certain neighborhoods are forcing buyers to rethink what they can really afford. In some cases, insurance quotes come in so high that deals collapse even after a buyer and seller agree on price. Meanwhile, the sheer volume of new construction has created pockets of oversupply. In some outer ring suburbs, you will see repeating patterns of similar homes, all trying to attract a shrinking pool of qualified buyers. Builders offer closing credits, appliance packages, and rate buy-down incentives. Resale owners who bought near the top find themselves competing with those incentives and with brand new product that needs no immediate repair. There is also the question of resilience. A city that leans heavily on tourism and convention traffic is vulnerable when travel budgets tighten. Families who buy here on the assumption that job growth will be constant may find that certain sectors slow or shift faster than expected. Orlando is not collapsing, but it is moving from a one-way boom narrative into a more complicated, more fragile phase, where buyers need to look beyond the theme park billboards before signing anything.
Number 5. Fort Myers. Fort Myers became one of the most talked about markets in the last cycle for all the wrong reasons. A rapid run-up in prices, followed by a devastating storm that exposed just how fragile the local housing structure really was. In the immediate aftermath, there was speculation that rebuilding would create a fresh boom. Instead, 2026 is revealing a harder picture. Repair costs ballooned. Some projects stalled or went unfinished as contractors ran into shortages and cost overruns. Insurance companies reassessed their risk and in many cases walked away, forcing owners onto expensive last resort options with limited coverage. Homeowners now sit in neighborhoods where values have slipped from their peak while their fixed costs have moved sharply higher. A house that once felt like a winning bet now looks more like an open-ended obligation. On many streets, you can still find a mix of fully rebuilt homes next to houses with visible damage or incomplete work, which drags on buyer confidence and appraisals. Buyers wonder what will happen at the next storm season and whether all that investment would have to be repeated. Investors who bought multiple properties in Fort Myers hoping for a fast appreciation cycle are facing tough choices: sell at a loss, pour in more money to upgrade and insure, or hold on and hope for a recovery that may be slower than they planned. In the meantime, listings pile up and price reductions appear more often in local search feeds. Rental properties that were meant to generate cash flow now have to cover higher taxes, higher repairs, and higher insurance, often with tenants who cannot absorb big rent hikes. Perhaps most importantly, some local workers and longtime residents are choosing not to rebuild in the same way.
They're moving inland, to other cities, or out of state. When the backbone of a community starts to leave, the housing market is left trying to balance on a smaller base of people who can actually afford to stay and pay. Number 4, Cape Coral. Cape Coral is Fort Myers' twin across the river, and its story is equally unsettling. For years, it sold the dream of a canal home with a boat out back at a lower price than South Florida's famous zip codes. Buyers believed that combination of water access and relative affordability would protect their investment. Instead, the canal grid turned into a stress test. Storm damage, soaring insurance premiums, and a flood of speculative buying all converged. Some waterfront homes that once looked like guaranteed winners are now challenging to insure at any reasonable rate. Others need expensive elevation, roof, seawall, or dock work just to satisfy underwriting. The insurance bill alone can rival a car payment or more every single year before you even turn on the lights or service the pool. At the same time, buyers are seeing that prices can move down as well as up. Homes that were listed deep in the $400,000 range during the peak now struggle to clear at much lower numbers. Sellers who refuse to adjust sit week after week while more competitively priced homes move first. Owners who stretch to buy multiple canal properties during the frenzy are discovering that they may need to unload quickly in a market that no longer rewards speed with higher prices. The layout of Cape Coral makes this especially visible. Entire streets of similar floor plans and pool cages can hit the market at the same time, all chasing a smaller pool of buyers who are now more cautious and more informed about insurance and flood maps. Discounts, seller credits, and extended days on market send a message to anyone paying attention. The old assumption that a water view guarantees rising values has been broken. For potential buyers, Cape Coral still looks like a postcard from a drone camera, but underneath that aerial footage, the numbers tell a very different story. You are not just buying a house, you are taking on a complex and rising set of costs that many current owners are struggling to manage.
Number 3, Sarasota. Sarasota built a reputation as the cultured Gulf Coast city. Beaches like Siesta Key, a strong art scene, and neighborhoods that felt more refined than rowdy. That reputation drew wealth, retirees, and investors who all assumed that demand here would stay strong no matter what. The challenge in 2026 is that costs have sprinted ahead of that story. Home prices rose dramatically through the boom years. New luxury condos and high-end single-family developments multiplied. When storms, insurance shocks, and higher interest rates arrived, the pool of buyers who could comfortably afford those homes shrank. Some high-rise units now sit on the market far longer than developers expected, even with price cuts and incentives that would have been unthinkable a few years ago. Insurance is central to Sarasota's stress. Waterfront and barrier island properties face serious premium hikes. Some policies come with large windstorm deductibles that effectively ask owners to self-insure the first chunk of any damage. Add in association dues and periodic special assessments for seawalls, roofs, concrete restoration, and structural work, and the annual carrying cost becomes immense. Owners who bought vacation units as a part-time retreat are now questioning whether they want to keep writing those checks. Local workers have been pushed farther and farther away, creating a two-tier reality. The people who serve drinks, staff hospitals, fix roofs, and teach in schools often cannot afford to live in the city they keep running. That hollowing out weakens long-term resilience and raises questions about how sustainable current price levels really are if the service economy underneath is stretched. In the quieter conversations at neighborhood gatherings and condo board meetings, you can hear the change in tone. Less talk about quick flips and guaranteed appreciation, more questions about reserves, upcoming projects, and the next insurance renewal. When even long-established owners start to feel uneasy, you know a market has moved into a more fragile phase.
Number 2, Naples. Naples is where Florida luxury tried to defy gravity. Gated communities, golf course enclaves, and ultra-high-end condos shaped an entire brand. For years, the belief was that wealthy buyers would simply absorb any increase in cost, and that demand would always outpace supply. That belief is starting to crack. Storms have hit hard. Rebuilding and hardening infrastructure comes with enormous bills. Insurance premiums in and around Naples have climbed quickly, sometimes doubling or tripling in a few renewal cycles. Owners who once shrugged off costs are now doing something they never imagined. They are sitting down with spreadsheets and asking if it still makes sense. Property taxes based on peak sale prices, association dues, and special assessments for seawalls, elevators, structural repairs, and clubhouse upgrades all stack up on homes that are no longer guaranteed to rise in value. Some properties are now selling for dramatically less than peak valuations. Others sit unsold as buyers hesitate to take on such heavy fixed expenses in a volatile environment. Inside communities that once felt insulated, you can see subtle changes. More for sale signs, more conversations about cutting extras, more residents considering a move to other states where their money goes further and climate risks feel more manageable. Real estate agents who once promised fast offers at any asking price are now talking about staging, pricing strategy, and patience. Naples is not empty, and it is not abandoned. The golf carts still roll, the restaurants still buzz in season, and the sunsets are still stunning. But the mood has shifted from unquestioned confidence to cautious calculation. For a growing number of owners, the question is no longer whether Naples is beautiful. It is whether the long-term carrying cost of that beauty fits any rational financial plan.
Number 1. Miami. We end in Miami, the global symbol of flashy Florida real estate. Glass towers on the bay, luxury brands on every street, influencers selling the skyline as the ultimate modern backdrop. For a decade, it felt like money from around the world would never stop flowing in. In 2026, that flow is facing real friction. Condo and single-family prices surged to heights that only made sense if demand stayed insatiable and costs stayed manageable. Neither of those assumptions is holding. Insurance premiums have climbed sharply from many buildings in waterfront neighborhoods. Some carriers have scaled back or exited, leaving associations scrambling for replacement coverage. Those higher costs roll straight into monthly dues that were already high, and in some towers, those dues feel like a second mortgage. At the same time, new towers keep rising, adding supply to a market where some owners are already trying to cash out. In certain segments, resale units compete directly with brand new inventory that offers incentives and modern amenities. The result is longer marketing times, more price cuts, and a quiet acceptance that peak values in some buildings may not return soon. Investors who timed their exit poorly are discovering that luxury is not always liquid. Sea level rise, king tide flooding, and storm risk are no longer distant concepts in Miami. They show up in videos, in streets that flood on sunny days, in garage reports, and in engineering studies that associations share with increasingly worried owners. Buyers who once focused only on view and lifestyle are now asking harder questions about long-term habitability, insurance availability, and the risk of massive future assessments for resiliency projects. Miami will likely remain a global city for a long time, but buying here in 2026 is not just buying into a skyline. It is accepting a stack of financial and environmental risks that are becoming harder to ignore with every passing year. For many households that do not have unlimited wealth, this is beginning to look less like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and more like one of the riskiest bets in American housing. So what does this countdown really reveal about Florida in 2026? From Jacksonville and Port St. Lucie to Kissimmee and Orlando, from Fort Myers, Cape Coral, and Sarasota to Naples and Miami, the pattern repeats. Prices raced ahead of local incomes. Insurance and storm risk stopped being a footnote and moved to the center of the financial picture. Workers who keep these cities running were pushed farther away, and investors who assumed endless appreciation are discovering that markets can move in both directions. Buying in these cities is no longer just paying for sunshine. It is taking on a complex bundle of risks that includes interest rates, insurance systems, climate pressure, and local economic health. If even one of those pieces shifts the wrong way, the numbers stop working very quickly. If this breakdown from Discover the Nation helped you see past the postcard and into the pressure points, do 3 quick things. Like this video so more people get a real look at what is happening in Florida housing. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss our next deep dive into the next set of markets on the edge. And in the comments, tell us where you are watching from and what you are seeing on the ground, because this is not just a Florida story. The same forces reshaping these 10 cities are already showing up across the country. If you want to be early instead of late, keep watching, keep questioning, and we'll keep bringing you the clearest picture we can.